Wait, you get paid for that? With Jacob Rodriguez. All right, well, welcome to Wait, You Get Paid for That? With Jacob Rodriguez. And I've got some special people here with me. I've got Natasha Rodriguez here next to me and our guest, Johnny Rodriguez. So I could speak all about the stuff that I know you do and all the cool projects you work on, but I guess maybe let's start off with tell us what you do today and what's the title, and then we'll go backwards in time a little bit. So
awesome. Yeah, I'm Johnny Rodriguez. I'm Jacob's brother, Natasha's brother-in-law. But my current title is Chief Innovation Officer at Fresh Consulting. I get asked what I do all the time, and I have a really hard time explaining what it is because it is a wide spectrum of things that I get to do. I would say it is a dream job. I get to work with emerging technology. I get to work with all of the technology around like extended reality, so like augmented and virtual reality, and a lot of AI across all the spectrums of AI. I would say I'm a designer, developer, motion graphic artist, consultant, like all these different things that I get to bring to the table when I meet with clients and do work. So that's, I guess, maybe the word vomit of what I do. Dude, and what my title is.
That was like 15 things he described on his job. I think that puts you in like, most people have a job and they talk about their job and it's maybe 4 or 5 things they do. But yeah, you've had, this is why it'll be cool to hear all those like practice areas or all those types of technologies, all that skills. So I guess what would be really cool, and I think it's always helpful, is to find out where you started. So, I know this is where you're at now, but you didn't start off knowing all this stuff.
Yeah.
You had to develop and learn. So I guess first question, is this something you go to college for? Or is this something that, you had to take classes for to get to this, to your knowledge and to the point that you're at?
Or was it on the job or learning as you went, or what was it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say like maybe one clarification on my title, because I've met other chief innovation officers and I feel like for other organizations, they're more of a position of management, where they say, hey, I oversee teams of people and people report up to me and we'll help lead innovation as an organization. I think something that's slightly different is I do those things, but I am more hands-on. So I actually get to be in the technology and I can actually lean into certain parts of the job that I really enjoy. And because of that, I wanted to give that caveat or context before I get into that particular answer, because I think in my case, I am getting my hands dirty and actually getting into code and getting into design and leaning in and prompting for certain things, and things like that. So is this a job or, that you can go and study for, or how did I get to that? I think that there are certain parts of my job where you definitely can get a degree. And I think there are people that get degrees. And I think there are still a lot of traditional companies that look for people that have degrees in this specific space. But you can't really necessarily say like, I want to be a chief innovation officer one day. Let me go get a degree on innovation. It might be that you have a focus on like development or design or consulting. A lot of people have business degrees and they're really more consultants than anything else.
Like what degree would those are CIOs getting, right? Chief Innovation. What are they?
If it's a more technical company, then it's a technical degree. So it's maybe software development with an MBA in business, right? An MBA typically would be like, hey, you understand the ins and outs of business and incubating a business, launching products and things like that. So it would be more on the business and consulting side. Typically, if it's a more technical, then you go to more of like software engineering roles with an MBA in business. That's typically what I see in that space.
Wow.
Now, on my end, I don't have any of those degrees. I would say to your question, it was more hands-on. And actually, I don't even know, like if you had asked me years ago, I don't think this would have been like the dream job I would have said.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this was I could do this, to be honest.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was a degree or a thing that I could pursue. I would say that I kind of created my role in a way. Like early in my career, I was playing with a lot of technology and doing a lot of things there. And I didn't really study anything formal on software development or engineering type, software engineering type things. On design side, I didn't go to design school or art school or anything like that.
Yeah.
These were just functions of like, I had more goals in mind of things that I wanted to do. And then I was like, how do I go do that thing? And it was like, well, I need to go develop and design to do that. And so then that became, so I don't know how much more to dig into that, but I would say in my particular case, it wasn't degree specific, it was experience specific.
But you did go to some college, right?
I did go to college. I thought I was going to be a neurosurgeon, neuroscience. I was like, I was a biology degree in school. And I was going to these classes, and I always had a really hard time in school with, to be honest, like I think if you ask my teachers, they'd be surprised at what I do now, because they were probably like, yeah, you didn't really do your homework very much, or you didn't really do great on your test taking. And I think part of that is like a late diagnosis of ADHD in my 30s. Like a lot of people, I would say millennials these days, right? Like I feel like half of my friends all got diagnosed with ADHD in their 30s. But I think that was a part of it. But the other is that I just didn't learn in the traditional ways of like reading a textbook and doing the homework. I was more hands-on and like wanted to get my hands dirty. I mean, it's just funny, fast forwarding to where I'm at today. It's like such a critical part of being able to like adapt and learn quickly on some of those things. So yeah, I did do neurology and stuff. And it's just funny because looking back, it's so obvious that I was going to get into something with technology, because while I was doing chemistry classes and biology classes and really struggling in those classes, I was like running businesses on the side that were building iOS apps and stuff like that.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, let's back up a little bit even further. At what point did you realize technology was like something fun for you? Because I think not everybody grows up like that has a Tiger Woods kind of, life. Dad's pushing you to do it. I think there's a lot of parents who want kids to have certain degrees. You see it with medical. You see it in the medical space. I thought I was going to go the medical route. I know you know that, but like that's not where I ended up. And I think certain people thought they were going to go the college sports route, and athletics is and succeeding in the professional sports world is very difficult. I don't think, me being an insurance guy, nobody wakes up and goes to school, goes to college and says, I'm going to be an insurance guy, or even, you see it with other fields. But in your case, what was it? What was the thing that kicked it off for you? You go, man, this is something I'm good at and something that is a lot of fun. Do you remember? Do you remember what that maybe was? One of the early memories?
I have some of those, but I think maybe one thing worth saying to anybody that might be listening is that sometimes you don't know when you're in it. Like I didn't recognize the moment when it happened. When I look back, it feels obvious.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes people don't think that the thing that they have fun doing, or the thing that they obsess over or hyperfixate over, can be a job. And I think it's important to like, what are the things that I spend my time doing on the nights and weekend? What are the things that I do when my wife's out of town and I'm spending time doing it, or my friends are out of town? Like, where am I spending my time?
Sometimes, or what makes you happy.
Or what makes you happy. Yeah. What brings you joy.
Yeah.
So I think like, it's hard to know when you're in it. But in retrospect, I would say I was exposed to technology really, really early on. I mean, you probably remember this. I remember Dad, like, I don't know if it was a garage sale or something, but he brought back like one of those old DOS computers.
Oh,
it
dude,
was like do you remember? I actually kind of want to look at this, but
dude, yeah.
It was one of these old, like literally
Microsoft
command line, MS-DOS, like black and green screen.
Dude, the video games?
The video games, yeah. We had
Pong,
like FS Teddy, FS Frog, and then Pong was in there. Being able to load up. I remember Dad had a computer in the garage and didn't have access to internet or anything like that.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, for me, I remember spending hours and hours at night or on weekends looking in this big, thick like textbook or book that Dad got from like a garage sale that came with the
none of us read, dude.
Yeah, and I would like go through it and look at commands like, oh, this is how you change into a directory.
Yeah.
Like CD space, F, whatever, / this.
What compelled you? Like, what made you? Was this just pure curiosity of like
I think it was just more of like, this is so cool. Like this technology is so cool. So I was just learning. Now in retrospect, that was called command line.
Yes.
And this is a very common thing when you develop like if you go to my office today, all of our engineers are in command line using commands to navigate versus like clicking a folder, opening, running an action. You can do that all with a command line screen.
So that hasn't changed.
It still exists. In a Mac, it's called a terminal. In a PC, it's called command line. And it still exists. And that early version was the way you interacted with the computer. There was no like mouse and keyboard at the time. I don't know if you remember that.
There was no mouse.
We had no mouse and keyboard. It was mouse.
No mouse, just the keyboard, yeah.
And so you'd type and then hit enter. And if there was a mouse, it was more of like once you launch something.
Yeah.
But you were working in a command line. So early, like looking back, I think those were moments where I remember really enjoying being able to like solve something or unlock something or open pictures and, oh, what pictures are on this computer? And you click next and it would like slowly show almost line by line a picture.
Like pixelated.
Pixelated pictures. And it was like not in color at the time. And then eventually it became color.
Yeah.
And we kind of upgraded computers. And I would say like, looking back, I think Dad always adopted this stuff like, oh, this is so cool. Let's go buy this technology.
Why did he even buy the computer? Do you remember? Because was it just accounting? I don't even remember what were they doing
about
with
what
it?
Dad does today. He still adopts things early. I think that part of it is like there is an influence from your parents on your access to technology, your access to tools, and that might have been more of it. It was more of like it was there, and then because it was there, I got to try it and play around with it.
It's really fascinating. So there's the really cool book. I'm sure a lot of people read it, but the Outliers. It's called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, I think, and he talks about 10,000 hours. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, dude, you had access.
Yeah.
They talk about Steve Jobs. They talk about Bill Gates having access to a computer
Early on.
Obviously, if you didn't have, so it sounds like, but not just having the curiosity, but having the access to have the curiosity.
It's a part of it.
And I even think about how that was a pivotal thing for you, because I looked at it. So as your brother, all I remember thinking was, dude, this thing plays video games. I was like, this is so cool seeing the little ball ping, basically like air hockey type. And you move the, what is it, FSD or whatever, left and right and up, down on the keyboard. And just literally, you're literally playing with a paddle and the ball's bouncing. And that was literally it. And yeah, I remember being just so, like, I look back, I'm like, dude, that was such a basic game. But we would fight over who could play on the computer. But I never even thought, I remember seeing the book. I just didn't have, that was not a curiosity I think a lot of people had, like myself.
And about how old were you when?
Oh, I was like a little kid, probably 5 or 6.
Dude, if I was probably 10 to 12.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were about
I think
5
I was
to
like 5
7.
or 6. I mean, I don't know, like, I don't think that was like the moment, but I think that was one of the first memories I remember of my connection to technology and like hyperfixation over something. I think there were other moments in my life, like,
fast forward.
If I think about like
what
the other
next?
categories of things I do is like video, music production, and leveraging audio to kind of create something, creating websites, like all those were like other checkpoints. Like, I think one of the bigger ones that I look back at is wanting to promote myself as a musician, because there was a long time there when I was younger, you guys know this, that I thought I was going to be like a professional beatboxer. I used to like beatbox and do stuff, and I was like, oh, I think I want to pursue beatboxing. And it was so novel and new at the time. Now it's so common. It's been like all the big
it's like
shows and all
mainstream
that.
now.
But at the time I was like, I'm beatboxing. And so this is when MySpace existed.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that in MySpace you could customize your pages, your
Yes.
background?
You had
Oh,
5
yeah.
You
songs.
could choose your friends, you could choose your songs, you could change your background. And I would go and bootleg Photoshop. Actually, I would say, like, again, access to technology. I was bootlegging software back then. And it's funny because you talk to a lot of people that are at the career levels and stuff, and it's like everyone did the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it was so inexpensive. It was so expensive to get access to this technology. So I had like bootleg versions of Photoshop and all this software. And so then I would like make my own picture. And then I'm like, I want to hold a microphone, and I want to have like technology. I want to have like audio interfaces on my wrist, and then I want to be holding a microphone that can plug in. And so I had to learn those things. And so then it was like playing around, like the 10,000 hours thing of like playing around with editing. And then it like, to customize your MySpace page, I don't know if you guys know this, you needed to know HTML and CSS. Those are basic parts of the web back in the day. It still exists. CSS still exists. They're development technologies that exist. And I didn't know what those things were. I didn't know what HTML was or CSS, but I knew that I had to type a certain amount of code, and I could, if I typed that code, it would do something to the page. Like adding an image was like BG space image equals, and then I'd put in a source, and I'd have to host that somewhere. These are terminologies that terminology I didn't know back then. And so
you just did it because you knew
I just
that's
knew
what
that it was the way that I could
Because
make my background change. I just saw it as a means to an end. I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know it was called web development. I didn't know it was called HTML.
Where did you go to find that information? So if you look back, where were you getting your info? Because you weren't going to school for that.
I would say that
there was no YouTube back then. So
yeah, I think this skill still exists for me. I think like my biggest strength is my ability to learn things quickly. And so even then, I think I had to be very resourceful. So it was like, at the time, it was like the web. It would be like, I don't know what it was.
Was it Yahoo?
Like, yeah, I would say Yahoo was a big one. Is what came to my mind immediately.
Yeah.
I think later it was Stack Overflow was for development. Stack Overflow is where you post the issue you're working with if you're a developer. You're like, I don't know how to do this thing. And then you go and you find all the responses to it from really smart people. And then by reading all the comments and the original issue, imagine there being tens of thousands of pages that get indexed by a search engine.
Yeah.
And so then you could go find the slight answer to it. And then I'd go and copy paste the code. And then I'd see the word blue in it. And then I'd be like, what if I change it to red? And then I'd change it to red and submit. And they'd be like, oh, it changed red, right? So it's a lot of trial and error of searching for things and learning that way. But I wasn't like a pro then. I was like very basic level, but I got exposed to a lot of that. Again, through the context of like, I want to promote my music, right? And really what I was doing was coding, and I was designing, and I was like doing video editing.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of more exposure for other purposes, right?
It's so cool.
I would say even like dad and mom's insurance agency, and like being like, oh, they need a website. I don't know how to do that.
You built that website. How old were you when you built that website
like
for mom and dad?
Early teenager, 12, 13, the first version.
And was that the first website you built?
Wow.
No, I think
you had built
my
other
own
website
first
for yourself.
Yeah, I built
for
my
your
own
music
website. Yeah,
or
for my music.
For MySpace?
Yeah, I think MySpace I would consider one, but I had like my own domain.
Yeah, Johnny Rodriguez.
I didn't purchase a domain. I had like a free domain. It was a .tk.
I
used
right.
.tk for years.
I forgot about
It's just
.tk.
like a specific extension because it's free and you can go and reserve it, and nobody had reserved a .tk.
What was the deal with .tk again? Like
it's just instead of .com, it was .tk, but it was free. Like you didn't have to pay for it. So when you're a kid that doesn't have access to a credit card, and you want to have something that a vanity URL is what it's called, like something that looks pretty, like Johnny Rodriguez.tk was my domain. I don't know if that still exists. Maybe that does. I haven't even looked it up, so I haven't thought about this for years. Out there. But .tk, where any website I would launch would be in a .tk extension. So anyway, that's a little bit of visibility into that. So just these little moments of like, again, there's a purpose. And I think I never shied away from the challenge of like, oh, we need to build a website. I think I still see people to this day that are professional, senior level people that will shy away from learning opportunities. And I think one of the big things that I've learned in my career is that you have to embrace the challenges. Those are the moments of growth. And I feel like those things that you've never done before, the things that grow your skill set, grow your ability, like build your confidence to be able to take on the next challenging thing, right? Imagine if you have 10 of those or 100 of those or 1,000 times that you've proven to yourself that I didn't know how to do that thing, but I learned how to do that small thing, and I built the confidence towards that. And I think I had a lot of those opportunities since I was a little kid, and I'm really grateful for that. It wasn't just me. It was like access. It was opportunity. It was trust from a parent. It was trust from a sibling.
Yeah.
Those things really matter. And I think as we think about supporting our loved ones or seeing the capabilities of our siblings or our kids or our spouses or friends, a big part of that is support and encouragement and like opportunity, asking,
100%. Yeah. It's interesting when people have lofty or goals that are kind of outside the norm. Like, dude, you were an outlier in our family where most of us had different ideas of what we're going to do. We always knew like, man, whatever Johnny's doing with technology, this stuff is just like, you were so ahead of the game. I remember there was a time where you were getting asked to do not just mom and dad's website, but you were doing like you had clients. You had people reaching out to you like, hey, I want to build websites. Pre-college, if I remember.
Yeah.
And then I remember you went to college, and I remember you talked to me about, hey, Microsoft or something like that wanted to reach out to you.
Yeah.
You had University of Oklahoma, I think, ask you to do building some apps. And I remember thinking at that point, I was like, dude, you were the first person that I thought I'm not sure college is for Johnny or for him. There is a world, and this is the first time I think it came to my mind, like there might be a world where this whole idea of going to school and getting a career through a degree, getting a career, I thought there might be a different path for people. And I think you were the first person that I got to see that. So if you don't mind talking real quick, obviously we could talk about all the projects, but those are some of the cool ones. At what point in college did you go, maybe this isn't for me, and maybe I need to start pursuing something else? Because I know that was also a pivotal point.
I think it's when I failed like chemistry like for the third time, and I don't think even my parents know that. I don't think mom and dad know that. I think part of it was that
the class.
Wait, you're saying mom and dad don't know you failed 3 times?
Yeah, I think I failed chemistry.
Dang,
3
mom, dad,
semesters in
if
a
you
row.
guys were watching this,
yeah,
Johnny failed chemistry 3 times, and
I was like, how am I supposed to be a neuroscientist if I can't pass chemistry, right? And it wasn't because it was complicated. It was more of like I just could not get myself to be motivated to read the thing or do the homework or practice for the test. It was there was so much executive dysfunction for me from something like that. And so I just really struggled. And I had people around me that I was like, I know I feel smarter than most people in my classes, and I feel like I have the ability to learn and all that kind of thing. But I just felt like a little bit of imposter syndrome. But part of it was that I was seeing success on my side hustles.
Yes.
So like while I was doing chemistry and failing chemistry on the side, I found the smartest kid in my entire residence hall. And that was like really, really intelligent and more of the advanced classes further along developer. And I was like, hey, we should do something together. You're really talented, and I have a lot of capabilities of finding people. And I saw myself as a business person at the time, not as a developer. And so I like partnered with this guy. His name's Ben. And we started a little company, and we went and bought a domain of my first .com domain. We put a business thing, I designed the business cards, and then we started to do, our first client was the university. And then after that, it was like just people locally in Idaho where I was. And And it was just really interesting. It was all really small projects. And honestly, I was really undervaluing myself and our capability. Like we were charging hundreds, not thousands, for bigger things that should have been tens of thousands. But I think I was seeing a lot of traction with that. And we started hiring other kids. So we're like, well, we need design work. And I knew that I could do design, but we started hiring other people that were in art, degrees or in graphic design stuff. And we'd have them take on graphic design work or whatever. And so at one point, there was probably 9 people that were working in my little ecosystem. We didn't have like an office. Everyone would work from their dorms, and then we'd have little check-ins and stuff. But I still at that time didn't think, oh, I should do this for a living. I was just like, this is just a way for me to be able to make money to go on dates with girls, or like this is a way for me to be able to make money to fix the car that I messed up or whatever. And again, I just never wrapped my head around it. So I think the trigger was when I failed that 3rd chemistry class, and I really had to take a good look at myself and be like,
yeah, man,
am I in the right degree? Number one. Number two, I'm seeing success over here. Do I want to pursue a different path? It wasn't just about the money. It was more of like, I'm having fun doing this. I just didn't think, I didn't connect the dots. I didn't have anybody around me that could tell me like, oh no, this is something you should pursue.
Yeah.
So I finally was kind of like, I should spend more time pursuing like creating digital products. Like maybe that's iOS apps. So I had self-taught myself Objective-C, which is the development language at the time. I'd done a lot of web technologies and building websites, but I was like, I should pursue that a little bit more, And I think that was like, I had to kind of take a little bit of a risk on that. I always assumed that I'd go back to school. I would say even till like a year or two ago, I still thought I was going to go back to school, but I've realized I really don't. And when I meet with organizations, they really are like, we don't care about that. That's not what you earn an MBA from experience. You know what I mean? So
what do you think? I don't think you're alone, but like, why do you think that that's the case? Is it just because other people around you have degrees and it's the whole like, you feel like you're the odd person out, or is it like, do you see value in it? Like
I don't want to like say that college isn't necessary. I do think college is necessary for a lot of degrees. There are certain cases where it can be a hindrance to a person. And I think for me, it was. I think it was like it was taking me away from things, experience that I could have had. And so it's not like I'm like, don't go to college. I actually do think that there's a ton of value in that. I don't know if I'll agree with that in 10 years or 20 years. We'll see where education system is and all that. But the reality is I've hired a lot of people in my career now, and I've interviewed a lot of people, and I've seen them actually carry out work. To be honest, the people that don't have degrees have a completely different DNA than the ones that do. And I think I'm not saying that's the only thing. There could be 10 other factors, but I am seeing some data that's telling me there's a different type of DNA. We'll talk about this DNA being like, there's like a hustle and like work hard to learn, like the learning capability, the ability
like
to
adapt.
The grind, the ability to say yes to hard things. That is really rare to find from college kids that have just graduated. A lot of them need a few years in the field, and then you start getting that. But most of the people that have that DNA of, and I'm not just saying like grinding DNA, but like the ability to take on hard things and say yes to things that typically people say no to, or ability to learn new technology. A lot of that is not really found in schools, or at least it's rare.
Interesting. And you think it's just a product of the way the education system is structured today? It's more of a...
Well, maybe it's the learning of the people, because they're like, I've got to learn this.
We have an educator.
I would love to get your perspective as somebody that's like an educator and all of that.
Well, I think it's like, if you're not going to school, you're like, I've got to figure this out on my own. If I'm not going to use the typical, college life, you've got to figure out a path. And I think that's what you did. So
yeah, I often tell organizations when I'm like speaking or meeting with organizations, we talk about this concept of innovate or die. It's a pretty bold statement.
Say that again.
Innovate or die.
Innovate or die.
It's a terminology that gets used in reference to like organizations. So the S&P 500 since the year 2000, it's more than 52%. But the stat that I say is 52% of the Fortune 500 companies since the year 2000 no longer exist. Yeah. And why don't they exist? They failed to innovate.
Wow.
And there's this concept of like, you have to stay up to date. Like
that's
Blockbuster is an
crazy
example.
stat.
And there's a lot of other ones, Toys R Us, like all these big organizations that we used to see as kids.
Yeah.
A lot of them chose not to innovate, right? Like think about Blockbuster to the Netflix model, right?
Oh man.
Redbox, it was in between there somewhere. But this idea of like, you have to adapt or you won't survive. And to your point, just to kind of connect the dots a little bit, I do think there's a concept of that individually of like, you have to keep innovating and be adapting as a human in your career.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot, you get a trial by fire when you don't have a college degree. And when you're in a job where you feel imposter syndrome, or you feel like you have to survive, and it's like, you are literally in the deep end and you innovate. And that it forces you to kind of like learn how to swim.
Yeah.
And I think where in college, you just kind of see like, wow, there's a lot of competition. I have to be have to be risk averse. I have to make sure I have a really solid plan. And so you don't have that trial by fire. So it's like a slower.
And not a lot of innovation in the sense of like everything's kind of laid out for you. These are the classes. This is the stuff. These are the projects. Here's the thesis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a family member that went to school in his late 30s, back to school to get his master's, and it's like his point of view is like, dude, this is not the real world. Like these kids are not prepared. These 20-something-year-olds are looking at me as a 30-something, like, you've been out in the workforce. And he's like, yeah, I came back to pursue a specific career that requires a degree. But anyway, I find that very interesting. I didn't want to spend, we could spend all day on your college side of things. I know that there was a transition. So let's see, you were in college for what? Maybe a year and a half? 2 years?
No, I
3 years?
Did year before school. Community college. And then I went to university for like 2.5, 3 years. I could finish in a semester or two. Right?
That's
still.
Wow.
And
You
I
were that
actually
close.
had like 2 years ago, I went back and looked. I'm like, hey,
transcripts and all that.
And they're like, you can finish still. And you're only a couple semesters away.
But at this point,
there might be, I don't know, the dilemma I run into, and I know maybe we can move on from this, but is part of it is like, I want to set a good example for my kids, but I also want to be realistic about like, it's not like I'm forcing them to go to college. And I would say our mom and dad, like our parents didn't really force it either, but it was kind of like, you're going to get further ahead if you do. And there was always an encouragement and support for that, but it wasn't like you need to go or we don't finance it or something. Like we never had that. So I think like part of it is I want to leave a good example for my kids of like, yeah, if they want to be in traditional jobs, like to be a doctor, you can't just be like, no, I'm going to wing it and go in the deep end. No, you need a degree for certain things.
Yeah.
And so it kind of depends on what they do. But I think it's important to know that there's other paths. There's always paths that get you to these different things. And if you look at some of the most successful people or founders of these organizations, they're not a common traditional path, right? And so I think it's important for them and everyone to kind of know that there are different ways to get to your goals. And sometimes you have to kind of see where you're getting traction and where you're having joy along the way.
So then after that stint of college, what was your first job that you started or went into or got hired with?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I guess when I was in college, I worked for an organization called Alpha Graphics. Alpha Graphics is, I don't know what they do these days. So we're not sponsored. I know you guys are not sponsored at all by Alpha Graphics or whatever,
Nope.
But this is a company that mandated printing, like traditional printing. So like if you are in any city that has an Alpha Graphics, I'm sure you could go print posters, postcards, business cards, banners, like anything that involves printing, large format to small. And I was in a small, like really like college town version of that. And so what would happen is people would come in and say like, hey, I need to print this for my art class or whatever. Like I need to go print this, or local business would be like, hey, I want to go print my business cards for our ice cream shop. And we'd get a lot of those. I applied for that, like just like a general role. But while I was there in the first few months, there was a positioning for a graphic designer that opened up. And it was like, hey, we need a graphic designer. We're getting people coming in. And Alpha Graphics did do this, but for larger offices, they were like, we want to find somebody that can take on the graphics that people are asking for, and we'll charge them an hourly rate. And so they're like, we're going to hire for it. But if anybody wants to apply for it. And so I was like, yeah, I want to apply for it. I feel like I could do it. I don't know. And that was my first time having success in something, being like, whoa, I'm actually really good at this. It was like, I remember exactly what it was. They showed a business card and they said, this is a real client. And it was some client that sold Italian food, and it had a picture of like olives and an olive branch, and they had the name of the business in some cursive handwriting and then writing. And it was a business card, and they said, we don't have the vector format, like the scalable format for this. All we have is just a physical business card, and we need to recreate it so that we can put it on a big poster. So we needed to turn it into a graphical version of this. I'm trying not to get too technical with it, but like a vector format, SVG, EPS, like these formats that Photoshop has, where you can infinitely zoom in and out without losing quality. And so you need to go recreate it. And I was like, okay, cool. And so they're like, I'm like, how much time? And they're like, oh, you got like 24 hours. And I was like, I could do this in like 15 minutes. And they're like, really? So then I sat down on the computer while I was working when nobody was there. And I just quickly did it. And I knew all the shortcuts for it because it was like, oh, if I go to Photoshop, I can drag this image in. I can click one button to turn it into a vectorized. And then I tweak the shapes. And so then I like immediately got the job. I'm like, oh yeah, you got the job. And I got up to $15 more an hour. Like it was
just because of that.
Dude.
That's
I was
amazing.
getting paid like under like $8, $7 an hour.
Yeah.
It was a college job. I didn't really care. So that was my first job. And then I got the graphic design. And then within a few months, the creative director for Alpha Graphics, which is in the city 30 minutes away, he went on paternity leave and they had an opening for that. And they're like, hey, do you want to take the creative director job? And so I literally would drive 30 minutes and I took the job. And I was at the bigger office where they did the large format printing. And I was doing all graphic design for 2 locations.
Dang.
Getting paid like $20 an hour.
Still in that college town.
In a college town.
Still taking college classes.
And I was like, and I realized very quickly, like, I'm getting underpaid probably here. Or they kept like treating me like I was like an intern or something, whatever. But I was like doing all of their stuff and everything would kind of run through me. I was like, and I had a few people kind of reporting up to me. So it was just this weird role. And then I was still like Alpha Graphics employee. I think I had it on my LinkedIn for a really long time because I'm like, I was a creative director at college, you know? But it was like all of that. It was like, what was so funny is that these college students would come in and they'd be like, my final is due next Monday. And it would be like a Thursday. My final is due next Monday. How much would it cost for you guys to do my entire project for me? And it would be like, well, it'd be like 30 hours. Like, okay, how much is it going to be? And there would be these rich kids. And I'm telling you, you'd be surprised how much this would happen.
Wait, what?
Hundreds of kids would come in towards the end of semesters with so much graphic design work where they would be like creating like the box that you would put, like you'd create a packaging for a product, for example, or a board game. And you have to do all the print design for the board game. I don't know if I've shared all these things, but
no.
This is
but I do
crazy.
all of this from scratch in Photoshop or Illustrator and all that. And I would be doing all the graphic design for it. And then we started getting like, can we do websites? And so I was starting to do like these one-off websites for Alpha Graphics. And these were I eventually quit my job when I had gotten engaged with my wife.
Yep.
And we were going to move and I was leaving. And the main owner was so upset. He gave me so much crap for leaving. It was kind of terrible. Yeah, he was just so upset. I think now in retrospect, it's probably because he saw a lot of value and he was getting a lot of juice for the squeeze kind of thing. But that was my real first job, I would say. And I realized like, whoa, I have a lot of value here with graphic design. And at the time, I still didn't think, which is crazy. I still didn't think like, I'm going to pursue some version of this, you know?
Yeah.
But that was where I saw like, that was like the first time I really got into that space. But you know that like years before 12, 13, 14, 15, I was doing all these things with mom and dad. And I was like creating the flyers, creating the website, creating the automation to help run and reprint and have it personalized. And like all these little things were leading up. But that was my first like outside of my parents' home and outside of just like freelance stuff where I had a job that paid me regularly to do kind of this stuff.
Yeah. And then after that, what did you go and do?
When I got married, there was about a year and a half where I was like, I'm going to do my own thing. And the way that I would do, I was seeing a lot of success, but I was really undercharging. Basically, what I would do is I go to Google Maps and I would zoom into a shopping center. So there would be one right by my house in Plano, Texas, right? I'd zoom into a shopping center and be like, okay, there's an aquarium here. There's a restaurant, a Greek restaurant. There's a like a hair salon place. There's this. Like if I can just get one client, I can get all these clients. And so all I would do is I'd find and call them and I'd say, hey, I've looked at your website. I can see that it's not really doing much for your business. You're primarily like a storefront, but your online presence isn't really helping. I will redo your website for $100. Like I charged $100 for the first client. And they'd be like, yeah, I don't know. Like, how do we know this isn't a scam? Like, let me please come in and I can show you some examples of my work and I can turn it around in a day. And that was the first time I ever did that. And I remember I went to a specific aquarium. What's funny is that website still exists. It's kind of funny.
They still have your website.
I looked it up recently. So I went to the business owner and he looked at me as this kid. And I was just trying to make ends meet, right? So I'm like, hey, I'll do it for $100, blah, blah, blah. I will even work from your office to do it, right? And so I was just trying to get the first one at a really cheap rate. And then he'd be like, that I did really well, turned it around. I was using like Wix. It was more of like drag and drop versus coding at the time. Because to a client, they don't care. They just want to have a website at of it. So I was looking for the cheapest methods to create websites, not how can I create really high-end, robust enterprise websites. I wasn't looking at all that. I was just more of like, they need a website. So I would land the business, build the website, and then it would do well. And then all I'd do is go to the next like shop over and I'd be like, hey, I work with Jim over at the aquarium. And I'd be like, how much do you charge? And I'd be like, $500. And I'd be like, okay, and how long does it take? It takes me a week. So what I would do is I'd take on about 5 websites a week at about a $500 rate. And then once I'd get that whole shopping area done, then I'd look on Google Maps and find the next shopping area, and I'd do the exact same pattern. And it was just the easiest way to make business. I didn't have any struggles finding business because it was so cheap, obviously.
Yeah.
And I always had this model of find one pillar client, expand it. I didn't know that this was consulting. I didn't know that this was business savvy. I was just more of like, I think that this will work. You know, I think this.
Yeah.
This
Nobody taught you that.
And I was doing a lot of that until I got a big opportunity with an insurance company. I think was it through you?
Yeah.
And then I got some video work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but
I remember
that was the next big kind of job I had, was just like turning around, cranking out websites 5 a week at about $500 a piece as my, and it was just so funny because when I eventually got a job developing, which was like a year after that, I realized that what I was charging was so low. Like we would charge the exact same thing I was doing. We would charge upwards of 15 to 25,000 at the first company.
Wow.
And I was like, I could have been charging thousands. How did I not know? I could have been making so much money doing it this way. But anyway, I was charging him so little, you know, for that work. And then of course I'd say yes to other things like, oh, your logo is terrible. Do you want me to do your logo for another $20? Like,
yeah.
I just didn't know how to price it. So I would just kind of like do add-ons and cross-selling and stuff like that. But that was my next job. It was like my own little business. I had a name behind it, a logo, a .com, and promoted all of it.
So you were building websites, you're doing all that stuff. What made you stop building websites? What was the thing that pulled you away from that?
I did websites for a long time, to be honest. I still didn't think of myself as a developer. I didn't think of myself as a designer or a developer or consultant. Again, I didn't know the terminology of all these things. So I wasn't really sure. But when I joined the current company I'm at, Fresh Consulting, I was 26.
And that was how long after this?
That was right after that. That was
okay.
the
within a year,
next job.
right?
So I joined I was the bottom of the junior. Literally my title at Fresh when I joined was digital and multimedia designer, because they were like, we don't know what your title should be, but we know that you do multimedia of some kind. So it was just kind of one of those things where it was like, I don't know, we'll see what I do. But my test was the CEO saying, hey, let's see if you can develop. We need developers right now. So I was more hired to be a developer. So it was like, hey, my buddy has this finance company. I won't say the name of the business, but it was like, 3-letter acronym finance business. And it was like, can you build a templated website that has like a content management system for them to update and stuff? And I was like, yeah, like how much time do I have? Same kind of thing. Like, how much time do I have? And they're like, well, the project's like a 6-week project, but let's check in on Monday. And it was like a Friday. Like, can we check in on Monday? And I just did the whole website over the weekend because it was just really easy for me. And then I came in Monday, and when I jumped on the call, I was like, okay, let me show you. And then I just like walked through the whole website and scrolled, and he gave me feedback and never said anything positive or anything. I had no clue that it was good or bad or if it was expected or not. I just knew that I needed to sink or swim, right? Like I need to do really well.
Through the client or?
Directly to the CEO. He was interfacing with the client. I didn't interface with the client. So by Monday, I built the website. I already had it hosted, had a domain, had like all of it pretty much 90%, 95% done. And then he gave feedback on it. And then he told me like, yeah, that's pretty good. I had been referred to by my buddy in college, Kurt. And so Kurt called me, was like, dude, he thought you did so amazing. You crushed it. I'm like, why didn't you tell me that? And he's like, he never does. And I was like, oh, and so I realized. But anyway, I did websites for years after that. I probably co-led any web development project for the company for years. But I was also like a designer doing graphic design and UI UX design and stuff like that.
Yeah. You went from making $100 websites to $500 websites to then working at a small digital marketing firm.
50 people at the time.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, Fresh started off as basically a design.
They did more development actually.
Development and design maybe? More develop. Okay. I remember, if you don't have to say the name of the company, but what was the most expensive website you got to work on?
At the beginning or
let's
now?
say
ever.
Well, let's say in the early days, your average website you said were 20.
Yeah.
And then I remember you guys crossed what was the big milestone? Was it you guys got close to $1 million?
Yeah, we've definitely done $1 million stuff for
$1 million websites.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say like bigger clients would be in the hundreds of thousands. I mean, early on with the company, it was rare to get $100,000 deals for websites, but there would be a lot of complexity of like, oh no, this one has like a bunch of inventory and it's for all these parts and you need to be able to search for it. or hey, we need to completely redo our checkout process, and those would get into the hundreds of thousands.
Okay.
And I'd be like the lead WordPress developer or front end developer for it, doing the same thing, going to Stack Overflow. Like, I felt like an imposter. I felt like I was like, I don't think I belong here. And I just didn't think I was good enough to do it, which is, I think, a common thing.
I was just going to say,
I found in my industry for anybody that's coming in is like, you just don't feel like you have the skill set and that you're faking it. But the reality is, everybody feels the stretch. Everyone feels that like, if we've all felt really confident, it'd be really like, you probably wouldn't have a lot of growth.
I think it's I think it's being talked about more from like a business coaching or just a business psychology is like, I think even, you hear it from medical folks all the time. You hear it from sales guys. I've been around sales a lot. I think a lot of folks go, the imposter thing is just standard. I think you hear it in the education space. I know we've talked to some. You've taught a lot of years. You get thrown into places and situations that you don't know. And I think what makes technology unique is like, whereas these other places, there's proven grounds, or there's like there's people that have done it. I think in the tech space, some of that stuff is uncharted. So you go, I think we can do it. And I think what I've learned in my few years in tech is you never say no. You go, let's look into it. Let me figure something out. It's like there's always this. I heard it called the art of the possible. Like, what is the art of what's possible? I guess is what it is. And the art of what's possible, I think, has existed more in innovation, technology and innovation more than probably any other space. And that drives everything: healthcare, medical devices, automotive. And I think that's why tech is always so appealing. Is like we're this podcast, we're using so much technology to get this recorded, to get it filmed. But your hand in it lends like a really unique perspective, because if we had 10 hours to talk to you about like the video work you did for the insurance company carrier that I worked with, they saw all your skill set. I certainly thought they're going to use Johnny because Johnny knows how to build content and he can maybe get us a better website. You had done all these amazing things with small businesses. I thought, well, surely a multi-billion-dollar insurance carrier will see his value. And they decided to use you to make videos, which was weird, but that was many years back. And I know you've done video. I know that you've worked with like major sports brands that we're wearing some of those sneakers. We wear the sneakers all the time and things like that. But I guess like there was a jump that you went from being a developer to then all of a sudden it was like Johnny can do more. And all this, you're going through the imposter syndrome stuff where you're like, yes. And something that I've admired about you, and I think people who've worked with you, is that you're always willing to find a solution and figure it out because of that curiosity that you've always had since you were young. So take us from developer to like the next step.
Yeah. I mean, I was like one of the lead developers. So meaning like we would do meetings with our development team, and then I'd like help lead trainings and stuff. So I was like leading development, but at the same time was also leading design team. So I was like another lead on the design team. So in agencies like this, and even to this day, you don't see a lot of overlap. Like, no. And if you do see overlap, you have like the that concept of like jack of all trades, master of none. And so it's more of like when you spread out your skill set, you don't have any depth to any of those categories. And so what we would start talking about, that's the terminology we use in the industry is called a unicorn designer or unicorn developer, which is the ability to do design and development. And we would look for people that have what's called T-shaped, meaning like the top of the T means you have a lot of capabilities, but then you have one where you go really deep. Like development's my deeper category. And I never identified that way. I was like, I don't think I have one. I have a few of these that I could lead up. And so I felt really privileged and blessed to be able to be given responsibilities in both categories of design and development. But I think, like, to be honest, I think I always had confidence in my ability to find something and execute on things. And I would feel the imposter syndrome, but I did have a lot of confidence towards what I was doing. I would say it's more of like when I started being in rooms with people that were like in suits or large billion-dollar organizations, and I'd be sitting there and I'd like look around the room and being like, I actually think I know more than anybody in this room about this topic. At least this topic, I feel like the expert in the room. And then they would look to me at the expert. I remember sitting in the first 2 years at the company, being in Chicago in a high-rise building and a big round table with these really like expensive things and people probably getting paid tons of money.
Big wigs.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there in my little, like, as a 20-something-year-old. And talking about the project we were doing and feeling like, oh wow, I feel like I'm the expert in the room, and I'm leaving that particular trip feeling like, oh wow, like maybe I need to give myself more credit for some of these things. And then I started recognizing more. But I will say that there was like a moment a few years ago, not that long ago, where I think we were talking about this, and you had kind of been like, man, like I don't know exactly what you said, but I think it registered in my head as like,
how
you could really do whatever you want. You could go and pursue any of these things and be successful in all of those. And just kind of like, it allowed me to kind of pause and think about and self-reflect and be like, wow, I actually can pursue any of these things, and I should lean into that confidence and some of that stuff. So I don't know. I think that was a pretty big moment for me as well, but it has been, it's been a transition for sure. I don't think it was like one moment. I think it's been more of like, building on the confidence. And I've taken on so much unknown work at this point that you hardly hear me say no to anything when it comes to that work. And that could put you in a challenging spot of like taking on too much and burnout and overload. But I would say, like, as it relates to like taking on hard projects, like I don't know if I would fear any of that. Like if somebody's like, hey, we need to be able to do XYZ for this large enterprise organization, it needs to reach billions of people. Like I feel pretty confident that I could figure it out with just time and focus. I could solve anything. I think anybody really can. We can be resourceful, especially at the age of AI these days.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that. If I had
access to AI, I would have accelerated my learning by exponentially by, I don't know, 1000x.
Wow.
So I think I will say that like when AI came out, that was a big, like November 2022, when the ChatGPT interface specifically, because I was playing with GPTs and spreadsheets and stuff before that. But when that came out, just the ability to be like, oh, now I don't have to go research on Stack Overflow, or I don't have to go to Google to go. And I felt really good at that, being able to find information. And now it's more about how do you prompt this thing to give you the answer you need, or how do you keep interacting to use it as a new tool or new skill set. So those have been big moments for sure. And I think people these days that are younger people right now are at a huge advantage than the one that we had growing up, and that for sure that our parents had growing up. So access to these tools are a big multiplier in skill sets and capability, and your ability to impact is a lot higher.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're talking about today and where you're at, and I know you've got all these really cool insights. What are you seeing as far as the big shifts? I say that because I know you spent a lot of time in the XR space, which for folks who don't know what XR means and what that is, if you don't mind describing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of terminology for XR. I would say it stands for extended reality, which is more of an umbrella category for what you would traditionally hear as augmented reality or virtual reality or mixed reality. All of those have different slight definitions from each other. Yeah. One being more of like augmenting the real world, which is augmented reality. Virtual reality means like you're completely blocking out everything and you're creating a simulated version of something. So more of like what you would traditionally hear with like a Quest headset, like a VR headset. And mixed reality might be a combination of both in some ways. Spatial computing is another terminology that's being thrown around that Apple's been using for their version of XR. But yeah, anything that involves that augmented, virtual, mixed reality kind of space is XR.
You've played around with that. I know that you've done a lot of crazy projects. I know sports teams. I don't know if you can talk about any of that. I know some NBA teams have come and you've worked on some of their projects, some of them local here. But I guess what I want to know is like, we've played with like the Snapchat filters or the Instagram filters, and I know that that's really cool and companies are using that. But it seems like it's shifting. Since you and I have talked to XR maybe about a year or two ago, there was all these different projects. It feels like I'm seeing meta glasses. I'm seeing a lot of folks with the meta glasses now, and Facebook's pushing more of that.
Yep.
Do you see a lot of, before we get into AI, I wanted to talk XR because you have deep expertise, and I think it's like super niche, that background. Where do you see XR playing in the next maybe couple years?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been talking about XR on social media or podcasts for a long time, and I want it to get more traction than it has been from a consumer standpoint. I think like for businesses, it's been around and there's been a lot of traction, but I would say that I see kind of two categories of where this is going. There's going to continue to be virtual reality. I think that we will see we already are seeing smaller and smaller headsets, but this idea of like completely blocking out the real world and immersing yourself in another environment in a way where you can interact with people, and the fidelity gets better and better. So there's a lot happening there. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation pursued on the VR space specifically. On the AR space, we actually have not seen tons of traction for headsets. Like I own an Apple Vision Pro. I own all the main ones. If you go to my office right now, you'll see I have shelves of like all the headsets that I purchased or glasses that I purchased. But I've been predicting this for a while, and but I do think that like the category that's going to take off is less invasive and culturally accepted smart glasses. So if you think about like, if you guys remember the what was it called, Google Glass? Do you remember those? Like, I don't know how long ago those were.
5
They were
years ago?
basically like a frame of glasses that had this little small block on it.
Oh, yes.
And people would call people that were wearing those like derogatory terms that rhymed with stuff. Anyway, there's like a lot of like, it was just looked like a little bit of a douchey look. And it was kind of like when you used to wear Bluetooth and talk to people, oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking to my Bluetooth.
Yeah.
That's what would happen. It was way before its time. It was it was more of a heads up display, meaning it's not like it's adding elements on the real world. And as you move your head around, like let's say it's like a little avatar person sitting on a chair or something, you wouldn't be able to see them sitting on a chair placed on the real environment. What you would see is more of like a display that's in your field of view. And as you move around, it just kind of would follow.
Okay.
But because there were cameras present on them, culturally, they were rejected. You know, like a lot of people thought it was weird to have cameras. So even to this day, if you go to 2026 where we're at now, people still struggle. You go look up like Meta display glasses or Meta Ray-Bans. There is so much on subreddits and on social media of people like not liking that people wear glasses with cameras. So
because they feel it's invasive.
It's invasive. We don't know when they're recording. People will go alter them to turn off the little lights to indicate that they're recording. And so it feels extremely invasive. And also it's a big organization or company that has the data. And so there's a lot of worry around that.
Yeah.
So I think where we're starting to see trends happen, and where my prediction is still, where I still predict is it's culturally accepted smart glasses. We're going to see a lot more heads-up display type glasses. So meaning AI-powered heads-up display, being able to see real-time information in front of you. So like imagine if I had these glasses on. I don't know if I really cared to see a lot of the adding elements per se on that. But if I knew that the last time we talked, you told me about your daughter's choir concert or your son's rugby game, right? And what the score was and what happened, the glasses could help remember that for me. And I can pull that information up. So this idea of like, oh, and how's your son's shoulder, right? Like I already got injured. Or, hey, how's your daughter's concert? Wasn't the last concert? Like this ability to retain information now gets shared with an always on display. And the more we can make them look quote unquote normal, the more they're going to be adopted by consumers. So the glasses that are getting the most traction are the ones without cameras right now. They're the ones that have more of a display to show you information and augment the information. So we're going to see a huge rise of smart glasses, AI powered glasses before we start seeing augmented reality. Got it. We're going to need to see a large population of large user base of consumers that are adopting smart glasses without cameras before we start seeing glasses with cameras become accepted.
And those exist, or those are who's got the AI powered glasses today?
There's a bunch right now. There's
most popular
I don't know
ones?
if I want to say all the names because there are a lot of competitive ones there but I mean, yeah, there's a few like, and even Reality G2 are the glasses that I really, really like. They look so normal, but they have a display, they have AI powered elements, it has transcription software, stuff like that. Metas, I do own all the Meta, like two of the Meta glasses right now, and they're really cool, but I feel uncomfortable wearing them.
Because they all are, correct me if I'm wrong, all of them have cameras.
Not all of them do. So sorry, the Even Reality G2s don't have cameras.
They don't.
They're primarily, they have audio, they have speakers, and they have a heads-up display of information.
Okay.
Because they're discreet and they're slim, they're a lot more culturally accepted. Actually, we'll be buying something and wearing them more often, and they'll look like normal glasses. Yeah. And they'll be more accepted because people won't be like, "Hey, are you recording me?" Like, there's no visible cameras. Yeah. And I think that's a really important piece to get adoption in this space.
Interesting.
So I think we're gonna have a huge rise of that. Of adoption of smart glasses, not AR, and then eventually we'll get AR when we have a mass adoption of smart glasses. So I think, unfortunately, we're still years away. But I do think our children will be there will be absolutely wearables, shoulders up, whether that's necklaces, our earbuds that are AI powered, our glasses, or others, those are going to be totally normal for our children. For
Interesting.
sure. I don't believe that we'll have huge adoption on camera-based ones for a while, though. That might be another 20 years
and
out, to be honest.
you're saying it's mostly revolves around just like the privacy,
Yeah.
and consent, probably.
Privacy consent is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And you're talking about millions and millions of people adopting that type of technology.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
And I think virtual reality, just quickly to mention that, I do think that'll continue to be its own thing, and it'll be more on gaming and specific use cases.
Sports is.
But I love companies like Apple who are like, I mean, their big thing was, why don't we show the future that's going to be coming in 10 years and give you a really expensive set of augmented reality headset, Apple Vision Pro, and show you what that future looks like. It's not going to be acceptable. People aren't going to pay the $3,500, but you will have a small subset of people that will pay for it. We'll get enough adoption to account for it, and we'll show that future. And then Apple will be a leading player. I mean, they did such a good job.
They're freaking cool. I mean, when you brought it over, I like music, and just even the DJ app, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to DJ virtually and then putting it on the TV. When you brought it over, was it like a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Still way ahead of the game. Super cool tech. I know the NBA was doing stuff with them. Being able to see games virtually, I thought that was freaking cool. All right. We were driving in the Tesla. And I get excited. Tasha knows this. I'm always excited about tech, but we were playing the other day with our Tesla's AI Grok, right? Tesla and Grok's relationship, and I was showing that to you, and you're like, "Wait, I had heard this was in the car," and I'm like, "Dude, it's got Grok. We got an AI assistant, so instead of just commanding the Tesla to take you to a certain place or open up the glove box, like you can literally have an AI, your AI bot there in the car." And I use it. Like I think it's like a long hold. You talk to Grok, and I'll ask it questions. So most of it's just like fact based, or some of it's, for me, it's business based, or just, well, I'm thinking of something. I'm like, hey, I don't know the answer to this. It's so cool to have it on the go. Obviously, we have Apple's got theirs. Everybody's got theirs. But talk to us about AI, because you were the first person to introduce me to ChatGPT back in November 22. Is what you said.
I introduced it the year.
I was in the sales side, and my use case for AI was like, Jacob, you're going to be working on sales. And I was asking you all these questions about, hey, when I look at contracts and I'm looking at this stuff, and you're like, dude, I'm not even going to talk to you about how these things work in the tech world. What I want to talk to you about is how can you learn to use this thing called ChatGPT, and how you can make it part of your life. And I remember thinking, like, this is a freaking foreign language to me. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, I use Google, and that's all I need. And you're like, no, dude, you have no idea. So you exposed me to the world of like how to prompt. And I think in my estimation, regardless of what industry you're in, I knew this. As soon as you showed it to me, I go, my kids are going to need to learn how to use this. And it's scary, and we're in the year 2026. So whoever's listening to this, maybe further years down the road, it might be crazy to come back and listen to this. But there was a time where the fear was like, kids will get access to this. Like, what would the education, what does college look like? You and I met with El Tec de Monterrey not too long ago, a few years ago, and we asked them, like, you guys have AI, or AI's here. How are you guys handling it? And if you remember, what was their answer to us? Something like, we have bots. We can use bot detectors. And I think if I remember right, it was like, they weren't going to stop it, right?
Yeah.
They were like,
they kind of embraced it. They're more of like,
embraced it.
There are ways that we can check to see if people are submitting essays with AI, but we actually want to be an adopter of emerging tech. And we know that there's going to be some nuances. So and I think we also saw the exact flip side of that with universities. They're like, no, this is not allowed. Our schools do not allow the use of AI. And so it's been interesting to see where the dust has settled, I think, for some organizations, but it's different everywhere still.
And you're in the education space. So what does the education space say?
Well, I'm in the elementary level.
Right.
So,
but as a teacher,
the kids don't use AI in our school, but I use the AI where I like have them write an essay, and then they submit it, and I've given it the rubric of how to grade it, and then it gives them their grade. So then I don't have to regrade it. It's like, awesome. Hey, you either get a 3 or 4. If you don't get a 3 or 4, you need to fix things and then submit it again. And if it gives you a 3 or 4, you're good. And then you're done with that assignment. Then you can move on to the next assignment, which is cool on the teacher's end. But I know, like, for our high school and middle school kids, it's like, this sucks. They can put our essay into this, whatever it is. Yeah, and it can detect, oh, you've used, a chatbot or whatever, ChatGPT, and changed your whole essay. And nope, that's not allowed, So it's cool on the teacher side because we can detect those things. But yeah.
And they've, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the school district that you're at made a recommendation on a certain platform.
Yeah.
You guys, they wanted them to use.
Yeah.
That was, I guess, so you're seeing large school districts of, I don't know, 15, 20,000 employees saying, hey, our preferred AI system of choice or AI platform of choice is XYZ. And it's interesting. So anyway, that was 22. We're in 26, so almost 3.5 years later. What is AI looking like now? What is it looking like? Where do you see it going? Because it's obviously, we've got Claude, we got AI video. I've played with you and I have talked about basically AI video and where that is. And China just released one with
C-Dance 2.
C-Dance 2, where you got like Bruce Lee fighting Muhammad Ali, or you got Ninja Turtles fighting Power Rangers in a super high quality, like cinematic, realistic clip, and it's a very short prompt. And in the past, you'd have to make these like big huge director cuts. So there's a lot with just the LLM world, the large language models, right? And also the video side. You're in that world. I mean, I know that you're talking to companies who are leveraging this and massive corporations. So like for the average person that doesn't live in your space, what are you seeing with AI, and what gets you excited? What kind of scares you? Let's talk a little bit about that before we wrap up.
Well, I think like there was a long period of time where we would talk about smart devices. We heard that terminology used a lot, right? We have smart devices, and we thought smart devices would be like smart home things, right? Like your lights or smart your locks, and we talked about like all the smart devices and stuff. The reality is, when we were calling it smart, really what it was connected. Meaning it's connected to the internet, devices that connect to the internet. And it was a misnomer, I would say. Smart devices, they weren't smart. They didn't have any intelligence. They just had the ability to be connected to the internet. And so then you can control them. I think with the advancements with AI, specifically generative AI, because AI is like a broader category that has existed traditionally, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, or computer vision have existed long before generative AI. But generative AI is a specific type of AI.
Explain what that is for people.
It's slightly different. It's a man, I have to make sure I don't nerd out on this too much. But
in the most
AI
basic,
is the ability to create something new.
Okay.
Based off of the training, the information that it has access to. Really, it's if you think about the foundational technology, the GPT, generative processing transformer. They all have different purposes for that, but Google was the big innovator in that space. DeepMind specifically, Google's acquisition of DeepMind, and there's a whole documentary, and if you haven't seen it on YouTube, it's pretty amazing. But they talk about basically it's a next word predictor. So if you said like Mary had a little, and then it would go
blank.
And say, well, based off of the training data, it should be lamb, right? So it's predicting the next word. That's really where this all started. And then that same baseline technology, so it's like it vectorizes all this data and information, and it makes it really accessible so that when you are trying to create something new, net new, it's able to kind of predict more accurately what should come next. So what we see is like, I'm asking a question and getting an answer. Really what's happening is it's predicting what the answer should be based off the training data. That's really what we're working with. And that foundational technology exists across all the spectrums of text-based, so whether that's chatting, generating images. So like if you're generating an image from something and it's like, oh, I'm putting you in this new format.
Yeah.
Same exact baseline technology. It's predicting how that should be doing. Video, audio. I used to talk about it being like 3 or 4 categories. We're in like the 50 plus categories now. We're talking about like it's impacting presentations, audio, sound effects, video. I'm not even hitting all of those different categories. So with generative AI kind of happening really in 2022, what it allow us to finally get to is smart devices, smart technology, and being able to be able to kind of have new, novel ways of thinking of things. So there's like, if you go and listen to like these different founders that are in the generative AI space or making an impact or creating their own versions, whether that's Grok with Elon or Meta's version with Mark Zuckerberg, or Apple doesn't really have one, Google, right. Gemini, right? All these big players, Perplexity. I'm missing a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But they all of them are claiming that it's going to be able to change things like curing diseases, like curing things, and it's already happened. I mean, this has already been happening. Being able to feed it an image and then tell you if you have skin cancer, like that happened pretty quickly within the first 6 months of generative AI happening. And these organizations were doing that. So there's a lot of really positive things that are going to happen. The claims that are being made that I believe is that we're going to be able to extend our lives because of generative AI. I do think that we're going to be able to solve things that have been unsolvable. And we're getting to that level of intelligence with generative AI. So it's going to really impact humanity in a positive way. Also, if you think about, I just told you my whole story of like, man, if I had access to AI, how quickly could I have innovated or made an impact, right?
Yeah.
That gap was for me, it felt really long. And if I had access to AI, that would have been shorter. Imagine all of the kids that are here today that are going to be in technology in their 20s, 30s, and their ability to have access to technology and information at their fingertips and be able to have it do deep research and agentic behavior to go and research for you and come back and report. And like the access to humanity is going to advance us so much further than we ever thought. But I do think that very much like it happened with the internet in 94, 95 and all of that with, where we were like, yeah, is this internet thing going to be a big deal? Now, if you think about it, it's like how many devices do you have connected to the internet right now?
Yeah.
How important is internet for us to FaceTime our parents or whatever? It's like the internet is everywhere. AI is the same thing. It's the exact same type of impact, if not more, in that everything will be connected with AI. And so things that are currently dumb devices that don't have connection will be smarter. So like these lights that are around us right now, like, yes, you can say like, turn it to yellow or turn it to blue. A more generative AI powered version would be like, I'm feeling depressed. Help me change the mood in this room. And it might change the 4 lights that we see into a mood that has been proven by science that will help soothe you. And maybe it's more red lights or blue lights. And it would know that information because it's grounded with search that you don't have to do as a human. And the more accessible that is to us, the more it's going to be impactful. So again, smart devices are really interesting because it's like, if you could ask at any moment, in the same way that you're in your car right now and you can ask Grok a question, imagine anywhere you're walking at any moment, anything you're looking at, you could say, how do I set that up? And it could see the thing that you're looking at and tell you how to build it step by step the entire way along the way. Like it's going to eliminate a lot of the friction of the things that exist in our world. And it's going to open up a lot of opportunities. But yeah, like I said, same way as the internet, it's also going to open up a whole new ways of exposing privacy.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So this is the good stuff.
This is access to the negative, right? Like think about like access to information is really good. Access to information, just like the internet, right? The internet has a whole other half that can be really negative, and it's connected to words that I won't use here, but like things that are evil and things that are trying to intentionally bring people down or take advantage of people or traffic people. Like it's really sad, and it also opens that up, and so. It is really critical that we have good regulation. It's really critical that we have monitoring and guardrails, and an open system sounds amazing, but it also opens up to a lot of negative things too.
Do you think there'll have to be more regulations? Because it's been interesting. I'm seeing more and more people openly against high tech, high names in technology, or folks in high names or companies of very big prominence are saying we're scared. You're seeing. We're at a time in the U.S. where there's some wars happening now, and there's some discussion of like, hey, can this be used for good, or is it being used for bad? How do we start regulating this? Because people's lives could be at stake because of just bad use of AI. And so, do you see that becoming something that something new that the U.S. or other places would that be?
For sure.
Wouldn't be out of the question.
No, I think it's going to absolutely need to be regulated. I think we're barely scratching the surface on what will happen there. I do think that the more you lock it down, the less impactful it can be. But also if you think about the alternative of if you keep it open, and yes, it may give you more access and let you do more things, but it also opens up some of those other things. So I do think it's really important. I think we are going to continue to see more restrictions and things like that. I think the biggest fear for people that are in the space like me is they have a fear of something called AGI. Have you guys ever heard of AGI?
No.
Artificial General Intelligence, which is when they think an AI becomes autonomous.
Yes.
Like becomes a conscious.
Kind of
and so the terminology is like, oh, we're like, if you go and look at the missions of some of these AIs, like we want to reach AGI. Well, that's our goal. Like they will claim that. And now it's shifting 2026 to like, AGI is more of a spectrum, and it's like we have versions of AGI already, and we already see levels of autonomy happening. But the fear is that if you have an intelligent system that can make its own choices, it's going to find that humans aren't needed. And so there's the biggest fear for people in the space,
like the Terminator,
the need not to have humans.
Yeah.
I'm less concerned about that, to be honest. I don't want to get too much into it, but I'm less concerned about it in this stage. But I do think that is a fear that people have, and I think that fear drives people to restrict it a lot.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to watch it. I could probably talk 2 hours.
I was just thinking
topic,
like
but I do feel like I'm very excited. I think it's something that everyone should be embracing. And going back to like that topic of like, I don't want to say innovate or die here, but I think it is important in the same way that the internet came and it's like we needed to embrace it, or smart devices or advancements in certain technology. I do think our generative AI, specifically AI, is a technology that we need to embrace and use as a new tool in our tool belt.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, obviously, it gets regulated. Hopefully, we get all those things as well. But it is very important that we tap into that, because the business world and all the things that we're getting into are going to require it. It's going to be like, in the same way, it's like, oh, you can't run a job without a laptop kind of thing. Like, you're going to need to be native in being able to use a lot of these tools for your job in the future. It's going to be so synonymous with like the internet, where it's like, oh yeah, I mean, where's AI? I mean, I don't know, all around us. What do you mean? It's just, we're connected. It's going to be abstract to think about like AI as this thing that you can turn off. It's going to be everywhere. So I do think it's important that we embrace and educate ourselves and adopt and learn how to harness it in the same way that we would with any other tool.
I have a question. So going back to your current job, at what point were you moved to the chief position? Like, how long were you doing that job until you got into the chief role?
I got into that role January 2025, so about a year and a couple months now. And I think that my mentality, and I tell this to anybody that's trying to figure out how to advance themselves in their career, is assume the responsibilities of the position you want to be in before you're in that position. It becomes a lot easier for your boss to say, oh yeah, let's promote you to that,
because you're already doing it.
So when I was a junior designer, I asked like, hey, how do I become a normal designer, or like just a contributor, like a entry level or even senior? When I was like a normal, how do I go to senior? How do I become a lead? And what I heard from my boss was, well, you have to expand your influence. Like, if you want, you go from impacting your project to impacting your project team. And then from impacting your project team, you impact your function. So like the rest of the design group. And then you think about, how do I impact the development team that we're working with? How do I impact the business team? And you just continue to expand your influence. So when I was like a senior level designer wanting to become a lead level designer, I was like, what does a lead level designer do? Well, they lead the trainings and they help educate the new people, and they help the organization adopt new things, and they meet with the development team, and they meet so I was doing all of those things. And then when promotion time came around, it was like I was already assuming those responsibilities. So same thing with chief innovation officer thing. It was kind of more of like, I need to be impacting not only my organization, but my industry now. Like, I need to be an industry expert. I need to be a thought leader in this space. And so then I started putting myself in a position to be like speaking authoritatively in front of clients, not in front of clients, in the industry, right? And so I was doing all those things. So it was kind of one of those like, of course. And I kind of got, to be honest, I got kind of an option of like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go lead this, or do you want to go lead that? Do you want to pursue, where do you want to be? And I'm like, I want to be in innovation. I want to keep creating and innovating and playing with emerging technology, impacting our industry, our clients, helping us stay relevant and fresh. And so it does help to have a supportive boss.
Yeah.
That kind of helps along the way. But it really is, it was January 2025 when that happened, but it was kind of one of those like logical shifts of like, you've been doing this for a while. Yeah, let's do it. You know what I mean?
And did that come with a potential like higher raise? Like,
oh yeah,
from where you were to, like,
for sure,
50,000, 100,000 more? What are we talking?
Yeah, it's more of like, I think when you start getting into these talks, you start talking about more of like impact, because if you're impacting an entire organization, they're like, well, we want you to benefit from the upside of the business.
Yeah.
If you're impacting the business, then you should have some type of ownership in the business. So it's less about like base pay at that point.
So you have more ownership now in the business.
Yeah, I got more ownership.
Okay.
I did get a pay bump for sure, and there's bonuses. So it's more of like you start to unlock bigger upsides for your impact. So it's like, hey, if I help impact $10 million of revenue, then I'll get unlock this bonus potentially would be like an example. Or this, that kind of thing.
And it might be good without getting into the specifics of
Right.
salary, but just like structure. What does a compensation structure look like for a CIO? I don't know. Not a lot of people know this. Not people might want to get into a chief level position, but so that they understand from the average entry level, which is usually probably a starting salary, and maybe at a startup some stock options, right?
Yeah.
If you're lucky, if you own you go to a big firm, it's good luck. It's going to be probably a nice, maybe a signing bonus. But just for folks if they're listening to this and they're young and they're thinking, man, this podcast with Johnny, awesome, his knowledge about technology, this is exactly kind of where they might see themselves. What does that look like at the top, or where you're at now, right? In a chief position, because I know those things get structured a little bit different. It'd be good for folks to hear.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the organization. So I can't really speak for everything, but at least in my industry and our organization, I think I have 5x my salary from the time I joined to where I'm at today. 5x to my salary. And that's just the salary part. I always asked along the way, like, is there a ceiling on what I can do here or how much I can get paid? Right. And the answer was always like, no. If you keep impacting, there's no ceiling. Wow. And that was it's a
great question. Say that one more time. What was the question?
Is there a ceiling like for my responsibilities or my pay here? And it was like,
both.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was one of those employees that like came in, like first month, and I told my boss, I want to be the most important person here. I want to be more important than your co-founder. I said that.
Dang.
Wow.
I remember him being like, okay, cool. All right. Like whatever. But really it was always like, I want to be really impactful. So I feel like I've also been kind of in control and a little bit, I wouldn't say aggressive, but like try to be in the driver's seat of my own career. And I think that's an important thing to be doing. But yeah, I 5x my salary by now. And I do think equity became an opportunity and I think some organizations that are maybe a startup or established startups or have been around for a little bit longer, that becomes an opportunity. You start thinking about like profit shares and stuff like that. But equity was the thing that I was most interested in. Was like, hey, if our organization does really well, I want to be able to get a cut of how well we do.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Or dividends. And there's a lot of terminology around some of that stuff. But equity becomes a big play, especially if you get to like an event like, oh, we're going to be acquired or we're going to go public. These are specific events that then potentially increase the valuation of your organization, which means that my small percentage becomes more valuable. And so if the organization doesn't do well, then I don't have a lot of value. If it does really well. So this is why you have enough people that are dedicated to improve the overall value of your company, then like that's really what you want as an organization. You want to have like the smartest people in your company all working towards the same goals, trying to get the same revenue goals, trying to push the organization to a certain level. And then you get to share in that upside. So my structure is there is a really high base pay for sure. And then there is a bonus structure. So being able to say, if I unlock certain things and for us, it's quarterly. So I just got a bonus recently and I was really happy about that. I worked really hard to be able to earn that.
Yeah.
And so I get like there's a quarterly bonus that comes from that. And then there's an equity thing. And that just happens when the organization does the distribution. Let's say so the pie is 100 and you own 1%, then you'll get 1% of whatever that amount is that they're going to distribute to the owners. So if we earned $100, we're going to split that among the ownership. I'm getting $1 out of that 100, right? Now, if you turn that into we're going to pay out $1 million and you're getting 1% of $1 million, that's just a dividend for profits. So there's like a upside from that side. So anyway, there's about 3 revenue mechanisms: salary, bonus, and equity. Those are the 3 that you can tap into for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Very cool. Maybe just some kind of rapid fire questions before we wrap up.
Yeah.
The coolest piece of technology that you're playing with today. If I think the first one you thought of right now, that's the one. What's the cool piece of tech that you're using today?
OpenClaw.
What is it?
OpenClaw.
OpenClaw.
So without nerding out too much, I have a Mac Mini that I purchased that's sitting on my desk right now that I can text with Telegram, like the app Telegram. I could have done text message, but it has full control of my computer, complete ownership and owners. Like it completely can run so it can run terminal commands. It can install software. It can delete software. It can open up my email. It can open up my calendar. And it's the fastest open source project ever. And they got acquired by the one owner. It's like a unicorn company, meaning like $1 billion organization by one person.
One person company
created
$1 billion
an open
company.
source thing that was adopted so much. People thought it was the coolest thing ever. that they got acquired by OpenAI, and he's now leading that whole thing, but they're keeping it as an established open source project. So the type of things that I do in it right now with it are, so every morning I get an 8-minute podcast that are on all the interests of things that I care about. So I get like a podcast on here's what happened with text AI, video AI, audio AI. Here's what happened with Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs. Here's what happened with the Lakers. Here's what happened with the Mavericks. The weather today, if there's any things on my calendar that I need to be prepared for, my kids' things. So it's giving me a personalized, with my name in the podcast, 2 speaking podcast people are giving me an 8-minute podcast.
Artificial AI voice.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's automatically done, and it's researched and done all that. And then it uses the local model to generate the audio of these 2 people that are all locally on the device. And I get it at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. No, yeah, actually 7 a.m. every day. That's like the continuous thing that it does. But I could have it do one-off things like really.
So if you can text it right now.
Yeah.
So what you're saying,
phone, I can tell you.
So if I understand this right, you have a computer to run your computer. You have a software.
I have it. Yeah.
No, it's a Mac Mini.
The way that I see it is like I'm trying to build like a little mini Jarvis. Like it doesn't control much physically right now. I gave you a little bit of a view of controlling my phone with.
Yes, you showed it to me
but
today.
It has access to doing some of that for me too. But essentially, like when you can give an AI the ability to do agentic behavior, which means like it goes and finds, it's resourceful to go and find, like if I tell it needs to go do something like, hey, I want you to be able to process voice messages and you respond back to me in voice. Don't come back to you till you figure that out. Like that's all I say. I don't have to say anything technical. And then it'll go and work for 20, 30 minutes and come back and be like, oh, I solved it and I coded it for you, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
Like, or if like I wanted to be like, hey, create a lesson plan for my kids based off of this material, blah, blah, blah. And then feed it to me on a daily basis at 8 a.m. And create a web app that the kids can interact with and track their progress. Then it'll go and do that for a long period of time and come back and report. And then I have it live and I can interact with it on the web and stuff. So it's essentially like this assistant that can pretty much do anything that has connection to the internet or a device. So the possibilities are really endless, or the type of things that you can do. So it can be like my finding calendar, like my executive assistant of like finding time in my calendar to make things. It could filter through my email for me and automatically mark things as unread. It can put them in folders. It can auto draft my 10 responses to the emails I've gotten since I've been on this podcast or whatever. And it can draft it and I'm just reviewing and approving and send. Or I could like mention it in my Slack channel or in my text messages and have it do certain things like, hey, can you go and help me research this thing or help me respond to this? Or I can screenshot and send it a message and say, hey, can you help me just... So instead of it being like me going to like Gemini or ChatGPT, I see it as almost like this artificial person that can go and be resourceful to go find the thing. So it's like something deeper than a one-off question or a research task. It's more of like, I need you to go execute on this thing.
Yeah.
Go create this thing that doesn't exist. So OpenClaw is the thing I'm kind of hyper fixated over right now, that I'm using. And every day it comes back and tells me like, here's what I did while you were sleeping. And here's the value that I was able to create. Or it's like, hey, I installed this new thing. I think this will help you. Like you should be using this thing. And I installed it for you. And I'm like, whoa, this is like, hey, I created a dashboard that monitors all of your tasks. And I created like this Kanban board of like what you're working on. It did that all on its own autonomously for me because it knows my structure and my life and the type of things I'm doing. So my wife, Alyssa, knows about me using it. So sometimes she'll be like, hey, like I've noticed that you keep forgetting to like do this one thing, like chore around the house. Why don't you ask your OpenClaw to do it? I'm like, that's a good point. I should have it remind me when I get home and I'm within a location. So I haven't really figured out its entire impact yet. I'm seeing a lot of people use it, but I'm like scratching the surface at what it's possible.
Wow.
But we will all have a version of that that's more accessible. I need a lot of knowledge to be able to run this up front and to be able to fix the errors and the issues that might happen along the way. But I think we're all going to have versions of that exist in 5 years for sure. Like where you'll be able to just message right on your phone to be able to get to some of that stuff. So that's a pretty cool piece of technology if you haven't heard of OpenClaw.
That's cool. What excites you in your job today?
Oh, the unknown, the next thing that I will be able to solve. Like I'm working on things right now, that technology that nobody else is really working with. Like I'm working on something with the San Antonio Spurs right now. That is a project where a fan could take a photo and then within a minute or minute and a half, they get a video of them walking down this hallway in a fashion forward outfit with their face. And it's like this 15-second video. And it's this idea of being able to give fans access to something that normally players get access to. And we're about to launch it. by the time this podcast goes out, it's probably already live and doing stuff. But that hasn't been done before. It's like first of its kind. Like, what's the pipeline to do that? And what if we want to add our own personalized music? What if we want to add a specific number of jersey that you're wearing for the home jersey or the city edition
so
jersey?
Cool.
And so I just get really excited about like the next thing that I'll get to solve. Like it's almost like a challenge or a puzzle. I thrive in that environment. And I think that it's hard to also separate and make a break from that, like of being like, when do you turn that off? Because it's fun to solve those types of challenges. So the thing that excites me most is like, what will I get challenged with next? You know, like, I think that is I feel really privileged to be in a space where I get to work on that every day. Like my growth has been exponential every year I've been here, you know, and I've been here over 11 years at Fresh. So you can imagine like the opportunities that come with that, but also the fact that I have no idea what's coming next and we'll be able to solve some of those things. So that's always exciting.
I think this is a good question, but where did faith play a role, or did it play a role in all this journey and where you're at today with your career, specifically your job and where you're at?
Yeah. I mean, I think like faith definitely plays a role in the unknown. I think there's like, when I think about faith, I think of like the Indiana Jones taking the leap of faith, like stepping.
Oh yeah.
Taking a step into the dark and having to actually have the faith to go into the darkness.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of that in my industry. For us to agree to like a tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of, you know, dollar project, and then potentially the technology is not that mature yet, or it hasn't been done before, is unknown. And it's dark. And it's like this, like you're at a little flashlight and you're hoping that your experience will get you through it, you know? So there's a lot of faith involved, specifically in the emerging technology space as it relates to like working with these technologies, because there's just so many things that haven't been done before.
It's all uncharted.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of faith involved with that. And also just faith that like, cause I believe in God and I feel like it is, I have to remind myself not to continue to just rely on my own strength. Like I was sharing some of that with you earlier, but like, I think that when you start to see a lot of success, or you feel like you're the smartest person in the room and you start recognizing that, and you're like, wow, I really like am the most authoritative. It's really easy to start becoming prideful or be like in this mentality of like, I don't need God or I don't need anybody. I can just rely on my own strength. That is like the cycle of pride, right? And so I try to remember often and rely on God and rely on the fact that like this comes from my Heavenly Father. This comes from God. This is something, this is a gift that I've been given. This is the talent that I need to go multiply, you know?
Yep.
And I have to kind of remember that responsibility, but also remember that even in these big moments that I get to shine, the more that I involve God and have the faith that there's something beyond me, the more I see success. And I feel like I'm saying this to you, but I feel like I've been scientific to the point where I've been like, there are times where I don't rely on God and there are times when I do. And I've seen like 100% success or like impact, higher impact when I involve God versus when I do it on my own. And I've been able to do that so many times now where I've been like, yeah, I do okay. But when I start to involve God and have the faith that there's something, bigger or broader or more impactful here, I just see, maybe I come out of it with more joy, but I feel like more inspired. I ask the right questions.
Ooh, that's good.
I acknowledge more of the people that are around. I don't lean into terminology that's about me. I lean into like the project. And I think that being grounded in that way is really important. So I'm not saying I'm perfect with it. Like I do feel like there are moments where I don't rely on God and then I fail or what I consider failure. But I just do think that faith is an important thing that definitely has been an important thing in my life.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing that. Well, obviously we're excited to have you. We're just, we're very lucky to get your insight.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
You take things for granted when you have access to them, and so having access to you and just hearing about all this technology, even just by osmosis, I talk about technology and people go like, dude, how did you find that out? I'm like, because of this guy, Johnny told me X, Y, and Z, and you're so ahead of the game. So if people wanted to follow you or kind of track you, is there any way they could, or maybe any recommendations you would make to anyone listening about just this space? I'll let you finish with that and then we'll wrap it up.
I mean, I don't have I had a with all of this, with like adopting of technology, sometimes you give access to things more than you should.
Sure.
My X account got hacked, so I don't have an X right now. I have like a new one, and I lost all of my stuff. But I do have a TikTok that I'm somewhat active. I used to be really active on it, where I talk about emerging technology.
Okay.
I think it's Johnny Rodriguez XR.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to pursue XR more at the time, but I think it's there. Look me up on LinkedIn. If you look up Johnny Rodriguez Fresh Consulting, I'll pull up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's where you can find me. And then
just advice for folks, or just
I just think it's like dabble in these new technologies, play in this, like see it as opportunities to learn and play in the sandbox a little bit. You'd be surprised again if you look back at my history here, like the things that you play around with end up making a big impact, and you'll connect dots. Your brain and faith and God and all these things will help kind of inspire you to leverage those things in a way that will impact more people or help make a bigger impact in your own life. So just like stay curious, I think is what I would say. Stay curious, be open to these new technologies. I think that would be my advice.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, it'll be cool to hear other people's stories about how they use tech, but man, it's awesome to have you. Thanks for being on the podcast. And
thank you. It's fun. It's fun to be on here. So I really appreciate you guys putting this together. It's fun to like be able to share some of the history and stories and passions. You don't really get asked a lot of this kind of stuff like in meetings, unless you're speaking, but even then they're there to learn. So you have to kind of educate.
Yeah.
So it's fun to be able to share that. So thank you both.
Yep.
Awesome.
You.
Thanks, Johnny. We'll see you guys. Bye. Thanks for joining us on Wait, You Get Paid for That? I hope today's conversation showed you that the opportunity is everywhere, sometimes in places you'd never think to look. If you enjoyed this episode, take a second, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's curious about what's possible. Until next time, stay curious, keep asking better questions because you never know what you might get paid for. See you next episode.